Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about your spiritual self. We need to walk in our spiritual lives. Take a look around at all of the lessons that are there for us to gain that knowledge, to hold on to that knowledge, and to be able to share it with others, the lessons that we've learned. Well, today I am going to speak with my guest, Sandra Koukou, and she's talking about her book, The Book, A Humble Quest into the Hebrew Scriptures, a father-daughter venture on a memoir of a Jewish prisoner of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I know it's going to be so interesting, and I can't wait to get started. So you know what I'm going to say. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee and get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Sandra. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Angela.
I am just so excited about talking about your book because I cannot wait to hear about such a venture, such, a project that you have taken on. But before we do that, if you could please, I usually read off all of these things that people have done in their bios, but you have accomplished so much. So if you would please, can you tell everyone, who is Sandra in your own words?
I was born in Iran to Iraqi Jewish parents. We were part of the Babylonian community of Tehran. My father and his family came from Basra in Iraq. I imagine your viewers know these names by now. I was born in Tehran. So I guess from all the trouble spots of the world, I went to an American school. At that time, if you recall, when I was growing up, say I was in high school up until 1974, Iran was ruled by a monarchy, the Shah of Iran, who was a very good ally of the United States and the West. And there were a lot of Americans. I went to an American school. Most of my teachers were amazing Americans who even learned the Persian language and loved being in Iran and found that the people are so friendly and such a cute people with a sense of humor and very hospitable. Then I went to art school in the Rhode Island School of Design, but I had to go back to Iran after the start of the revolution because I was not being very coherent anymore. I was so worried about my family. Yeah. And I guess through our discussion that follows, you may get a glimpse into why I feel it was kind of destined for me to go back.
It's so interesting that when we take a time to, or take a moment to look back over our lives at whatever present moment we're in, and I've said this in many a discussion, it's so interesting how each step that we take really does lead us to where we are. And even though we may not necessarily see it in that particular moment, when we get to a place of purpose, or we get to this place where we recognize the blessing that we have, or this awesome thing has happened, it's like, wow, I'm so glad, that I made a left, a right, a straight. I went straight, I made another left, and then I made another right, and it all ended up working out. Okay, I cannot wait to go along on the journey with you. Now, what were you intending for the readers of your book to glean from the book? What did you want for them to take away? Did you have a particular objective or a particular something you were trying to share?
Absolutely. This is my father's memoir, and when he told me that he's embarking on writing a book about the Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible, I thought that, well, this is my chance to find out who I am. So I cannot leave him alone to do this work on his own. His English was a very Persian kind of English, and I was well schooled in the modern speak, if you will. So I wanted to help. And I found that as a bridge builder that he always was, my dad wanted to reach out to citizens of the world, whichever background they come from. And he wanted to make it his business to decipher the historical significance of the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, in a biblical context. He had an indomitable heart that was open to humankind's destiny. He saw that the world is taking far different angles than what anyone would have imagined before the Islamic Revolution of Iran. And he set out to build bridges. Before he was doing that in his factory, he had a factory for brake linings, for manufacturing brakes for cars and buses and trucks. And he was always the one that the worker who had a sick person at home or a daughter to marry would go to and get all the help that he needed. So the bridges he built through fraternal relations with all groups were solid and independent of their religion, their culture, and their ethnic affiliation. So he wrote this book because he thought he could continue that at a time when we really, really needed it.
You know, God bless those people that are able to see us in our best light, to see us the way that God sees us, regardless, like you said, regardless of our outer shell, of those things of the ethnicity or the religious affiliation, that He's able to just see spirit. And that is such a beautiful way to look at people, such a beautiful way. Now, some people may be saying, well, you know, what if I have no association with Iran, or I'm not Jewish, or, you know, I don't know anything about the area that we refer to as Persia. Would you say that this is still a good book for anyone to read? Does the theme have to, is it necessarily related to those who are culturally tied, or is it for everyone?
It's actually for everyone, and that's with a big underline. It's about courage and resistance when your whole world seems to be caving underneath your feet. What do you do? And you really need to find out who you are. So it's a question of identity. And that word is very big. It's front and center in everyone's minds. At least it should be if it isn't, because we live at a time when there are so many different groups trying to outdo the other, you know, and my father is there to tell us it's not about that. And if we take the time to listen to one another's stories, then we can find out that, what about my story? Let me find out about mine. And the more we do that, the better we're able to connect. So this is actually, it's an uplifting memoir of wrongful incarceration and narrow escape from execution by the theocratic regime of the Islamic Republic of Iran. For him, it ushered a spiritual journey remeditating the Hebrew Bible, which was the only book he was able to keep in prison for 4.5 years. Oh, wow. So, and he started to translate it to his prison inmates, and that's how they survived their trauma.
Oh my gosh.
So, and it led to profound insight about history's fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, you know, because of theocratic regime, the only thing now they have left to hang on to, because everything that they purported that the reason was for the revolution to happen, all those reasons have fizzled away, crumbled one after another. So the only thing the regime has to hang on to is death to America, which they call the big Satan, and death to Israel, the small Satan. And that is their justification for being in power. Meanwhile, the people are such a beautiful, poetic people, Iran, such a rich history. And my heart is still burning like a candle.
And, you know, it's so interesting because, unfortunately, so many times we do not study geography just in its modern sense of the names of the various countries that we know in present day time. But what's even worse is that many times we haven't done the research to find out what countries are we reading about in our Bibles. Where did these countries go? And so many times we're surprised to find out that these people that we're reading about are in the areas of modern-day Turkey or Iran or Iraq, or this is modern-day Saudi Arabia. And we're really kind of floored. It's like, what? Is that where this happened? Oh, my goodness. So I think when we have an understanding of who we're talking about and where these things are happening, we're able to see people in a different light, not just the light that shines on them today, but historically what has happened, and it gives us a better understanding. So I definitely understand that. Now, I liked how you said before that your father's English was a Persian English, and I think any one of us that has parents or grandparents that's from another country, we understand what that means. We speak a different English by today's standards, and we have a lot of slang that's kind of mixed in there. And when you translate verbatim, sometimes it loses something in translation. And it was so nice of you to say that you helped. You brought like a modern sense to it. But did you, when you were reading the book or going along the process, did you find that you were helping to mold the story in any way, or did you help put a better sequence to the stories for those of us who aren't familiar culturally with the area?
Thank you so much for asking that. At one point, my father told me to stop looking at the monitor and take my hands off the keyboard, because Dr. Angela, for over 3 years, we worked together over the phone and by email, because he lived in New York and I'm in Canada. And so he said, well, take a minute away from the keyboard. I just want to tell you one thing. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you, and you wouldn't have been able to do it without me. And so that lesson is so precious. And if your readers, your listeners take nothing away from this, I just want to urge all young people and even the older ones to connect with their parents and take their stories and learn about who they are, because nobody can tell us about where we're coming from better than our parents can. And so my dad would send me a piece of writing and then say, fix it up with the English. And I'd send it back, and he'd say, oh, this is too long. So then I'd send him something else, because I heard his voice and I saw what he was after and got a feel for what he wanted. And And I would send something back, and he'd say, "You're amazing. I just have to say one thing, and you know exactly what I'm at." So the thing is that he was so confident. He knew exactly what he wanted. Yeah. And that drew me in deeper and deeper to the point where it changed my whole outlook, learning about the Hebrew Bible. And I can say that for Christians and Muslims, it's a beautiful tool, my dad's book, because a lot of the faith that they uphold comes from the Hebrew Scriptures. And so what my dad has made easier for all of us is he actually helps us, holds us by the elbow and nudges us through to its many chambers to discover the mysteries, because it's not easy to read the Bible, as a newcomer. And so this is really precious. It's very innovative because he helps you find a way to put your foot in the door.
I love it.
If I may say, the editors at Author House were so good, and they said, "Well, we want a personal story." So I realized then that I had to put the story that was going on outside of the prison walls, in which I was connected, because that would somehow show why it makes so much sense to read all the rest of the book about Bible prophecy and how the prophets actually pinpointed what actually did happen in recent history.
Well, Sandra, it is time for us to go to break. So if you could you remind everyone what is the title of your book, how can we get a copy, and how do we follow you online?
Sure, absolutely. The name of the book is The Book, A Humble Quest into the Hebrew Scriptures, and it's by Joseph Hesco Koukou, Koukou, and it was illustrated and edited by myself, Sandra Koukou, his daughter. You can find this book on Amazon. You can also go to authorhouse.com and get a copy. The website, which is currently under construction, I'll mention it. It's www.thebookahumblequest.com. I can be reached at smilingsandra26@gmail.com.
Alrighty, listeners, you now know where you can get a copy. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Sandra Koukou, and I am really excited about talking to her today because she is talking about the book, A Humble Quest into the Hebrew Scriptures, a book that her father has written and she has assisted with in so many different ways. And I just love that this is a joint venture. So, Sandra, what was it like working with your father? So many people have stories of, good, bad, and not so good sometimes when it comes to working with a family member. So what was it like working with your father?
Oh, it was such a happy time. He was such a kind man. And working with him really reconnected me to those seminal moments back in Iran that helped me get his release. And it was reliving the journey, and it was such a wonderful gift working with him on this book. They were about to execute my father. They had blamed on him the fact that he's Jewish and he's a Zionist. they said he's a Zionist, and they invented stories like he was sending MiGs to Israel, which is nothing of the sort. He was just busy paying the debts after building a factory, and by the time the factory was in full productivity, Khomeini arrived in Iran, and so they put him in prison because they wanted it. It was a gold mine, and so it was the Middle Ages in Iran. You know, everybody had somebody in prison. There wasn't one family to this day that hasn't been through a harrowing journey, either the death of a loved one, an execution, or life imprisonment, or imprisonment. So I remember the feeling, I mean, working on this book brought me back to one moment in my life that I can picture to this day as though it's eternal. It's with me, and it's me reliving it every moment. It was the feeling of utter refusal to succumb to the prospect of this execution ever happening. Because such a kind man, and to be in the hands of such cruelty, I felt that this is my chance to connect with God. And, you know, when you believe in your God, He will respond. One day I stopped the car of this powerful judge, a ruthless judge who sat on my father's case, and I wouldn't let his car go, his bulletproof Peugeot, go inside the prison door. And before I knew it, I was confronted, I was facing the butt end of a loaded rifle that was pointing securely in my direction. A Revolutionary Guard came out and pointed it at me, because for all he knew, I could have been a terrorist. I could have been somebody who wants to blow something up. Under my chador could have been a gun. But what saved the day was my white veil, because the judge who was inside the bulletproof car recognized me from the white veil. And he remembered that I was that little girl, well, I was 23, but I was posing as though I was 16, who met him on this little dusty alleyway in Qom, in the medieval city of Qom, you know, on his way to the Friday prayers that was televised. And that was my only chance of reaching him and putting a letter in his hand. And in the letter, me and this Mujahid who helped us get him out, he had contacts in prison, wrote that there's been a whole 2-page spread in the newspaper, and meanwhile there's been no judgment for 2 years. They keep telling us, call back next week. After 2 years, it's like mental torture, so I had to intervene. And I find that my intervention brought me, I mean, I was saying truth to power, and and I got an answer. It led eventually to the file coming out. They were hiding it because they wanted the proceeds of the factory, but it came out, and because my father had charmed the judge during the court case 2 years before, the judge wanted to see the file back on his desk. So instead of being pushed into prison, I was asked to go up there with my mom in the administration office so he would ask the people around him, where is the file? And then I said, it's here, I brought it. And I described the archive man, I had described the archive room with towers and towers of folders, and they kept taking my dad's out from the top and putting it on the bottom. That's another story, but you know, you have to read it. It's really interesting to see how all that worked out.
Of course. Now, did your father see the book published?
Yes, because no, he didn't. He just saw that He was in rehab, and I had just finished the very last changes that he asked for. And I showed it to him while he was in his bed just before he passed away. And he okayed it. He said, just take this one page out. So by the time he passed away, the book was ready to go to the publishers. And because he had paid for a second edit, and we knew this, we knew that the publisher would say you have too many references from Wikipedia. We were just fighting time over the phone. So I had to go and take 50 references from a book source instead of Wikipedia. And that was a blessing because I found Cambridge scholars, I found books by very wonderful sources. And by then I knew pretty much what he would okay and what he would have liked, how he would have liked me to write it. So it was a harrowing job. And then it got published in 2015.
I'm so glad that you had that type of relationship with your father, that you were able to intercede on his behalf, if you will, to be able to make those final changes. You know, so many times we think that when someone passes away, that they haven't seen the final product or how it's going to look in its end. And I remember hearing someone do an interview, and they said, do you think that Walt Disney, Walt himself, he passed away before Disneyland was, completed. Do you think he would have ever imagined that it would look like this? And according to the interview, they said, of course, that's exactly what he did. He imagined that it would look like this. So, even though I hear that your father didn't, that he passed away before there was a hard copy of it in your hand, I think in his mind's eye, he was able to see the finished project and to see that it was going to be as awesome as the two of you had imagined. I just choose to believe that. That is so awesome. Well,
Dr. Angela,
I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we are just about out of time, Sandra. Talking to you, it is so awesome, and time goes by so quickly. But I want to give you enough time to, if you would please, remind our listeners, what is the title of the book? Where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Absolutely. It's called The Book, A Humble Quest into the Hebrew Scriptures by Joseph H. Koukou, Koukou, edited and illustrated by Sandra Koukou. You can find it on Amazon or by going to authorhouse.com. And you can also reach me at any time at smilingsandra26@gmail.com. And the website is www.thebookahumblequest.com.
I love it. All righty, listeners, we'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Sandra Koukou, and she's talking about the book, A Humble Quest into the Hebrew Scriptures. It is a project that she and her father have worked on, and it is now available for you to read. Now, right before we were about to go to break, Sandra, unfortunately I had to cut you off, and I'm so sorry for that, but I want to give you an opportunity to complete your thought. So, yes, ma'am, what were you about to say?
I wanted to tell you, Angela, that Dr. Angela, our loved ones, they are watching. I have no doubt about that. On the first page of the website, www.thebookahumblequest.com, at the bottom there's an interview with Radio Shalom here in Montreal. And he asked me about this he had read the book, and he said, there, you talk about your grandfather coming and talking to you from the other world. At some point in Rome, where we went to visit the big, powerful mullah and give him the letter, I was staying at his mother's house with my mom, and there was a 2-hour moment of silence, and I could have sworn that my grandfather who loved my dad so much, wanted to find out where he was. And so I kept getting questions in threes, and I had to answer in threes. And I'm here to tell you that I'm not the only one. I've spoken with others who said when they talk, they come in threes, and they ask 3 times the same question. And this way you know. And I think that's what empowered me, because I did the craziest things. I mean, who would have stopped the car of a judge and wouldn't let him go in the prison door? I could have been pushed in there and never come out. And yet the miracles happened just because you trust so deeply in God. You have such a faith that is unswerving. And I think it was a good thing that I worked with my dad, because I realized why of all my siblings, I was the one who was most like him. Very much intimate with my relationship with my Creator. And my dad was always like that. That's why people loved him, and he was able to connect with everybody. Everyone was his brother or sister.
I love it. I love it. You know, we get blessed with certain people in our lives, and I really and truly feel that they are a gift to our spirit. They're a gift for our soul, just to keep us going and to remind us to, keep persevering, to keep a smile, to look for that silver lining, and to just remember that we are all brothers and sisters in this life's journey. And if we treat each other with kindness and love and respect, that our lives can be so much better, that they'll be so enriched because we have that attitude. And I'm so glad that your father not only taught you that, but was willing to share that with others simply by just, being the person that he is and having that personality. I love that you share that about him. Now, do you have any plans to do anything more with this book? So many times, I talk to people and I would love to make this a fill in the blank. Do you have any future plans, or will this just stay a book?
Definitely. The book is now being translated into French as we speak. We are trying to make a huge campaign to raise funds within about 100 synagogues to raise funds to translate it into Hebrew. And I would like to have it taken and adapted to the screen. I would like a movie done out of it, because I think that a lot of people can connect. Everyone's talking about Iran nowadays, and everyone is talking about faith. And I think that what the gift that my father has given us, it's not preachy, it's short and sweet, it's inspiring, and it comes from a person who embodies what all of us have been taught, that we are all created in God's image. And so I was reflecting on that today coming to work, and it seemed so front and center clear to me to see that no matter who the person is sitting next to me on the bus, or talking with me over the phone, or eating with me at the table, this person is created in the image of God. And I've always had something inside me that would spark and would generate a feeling of joy just at seeing that we're all different, we're all unique, and how wow is that? There's something to that.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And that's all that matters.
Mhm. I agree. I agree with you. It really is about our understanding, our perception of who others are to us in connection. And I've talked to so many people who would say that they're not a religious person, but they're more of a spiritual person. And what I mean, what their meaning is that it's not about what denomination or faith system that they are a part of, but that they realize that, like you said, we are all created by God, and because of that, we need to be respectful to each other and try to love each other as much as possible. And it's so refreshing to hear someone say that and to remind us that we do need to be loving and more kind to each other and respectful. I agree with you, Sandra.
And what I've learned a lot, Dr. Angela, is that the more Christians go to church and continue and build their communities, the healthier a society we have, the more Jews who go to synagogue and celebrate Shabbat, and the more Muslims go and follow their faith in the way that they were taught. We have to listen to our parents and get what we can from them before they pass from this world. Yes. And this is how we know who we are. And when we know who we are, I'm quoting Rabbi Sachs because my father taught me to deepen my studies. When we know who we are, we can appreciate who somebody else is and what they want to give to the world. And look, we're here for such a short time. Let's just enjoy one another.
It is absolutely amazing when people forget just that very, very simple thing, is that we are here for just a short time. When we think about it and we say, oh, well, the average person lives to be 70 or 80 years old, that seems like a really long time. But yet, as we age, we're experiencing this change in time, but yet we find ourselves saying things like, oh my gosh, I remember that like it was yesterday. Like I can't believe that I'm almost 50 years old. I remember this, that, and the other. My parents are a part of that baby boomer generation, and my father is even quite some years older than my mother. He remembers different things than she does, and it's like, but time truly passes so quickly when you're living each moment. And you're right, we are here for such a short period of time that we really do need to learn to appreciate it so much more. And
because I went to an American school that was international, and we were growing up side by side, elbow to elbow with kids from all the different races, religions, and cultures, and we enjoyed it. We celebrated our differences.
Absolutely. It's just having that respect of human life and just saying what you do and what you want to happen in your life, those positive things, and having a sense of respect, about that. Now, I try not to, quote people too often or mix our religion with our secular, but it always comes back around to the famous poet Maya Angelou in one of her poems when she says, we are more alike, my friend, than we are unalike. And
so
it
true.
really and truly comes down to that we all want love and peace and happiness and to raise a family and to, work a good day.
And how boring it would be if we were all alike.
Yes.
How boring it would be. I mean, Rabbi Sachs, he says God is the author. God of unity above creates diversity here below. Because how else can we learn to overcome this sense of loneliness and vanquish it unless we can connect with others. Mm-hmm. And we, like I've heard it said, we all go to the mountaintop from different paths, but they all lead to the same place.
Yeah.
And it's a holy place.
I love it. I love it. Well, Sandra, we have about a minute and a half left in the show, but I want to give you that time to ask you if you would please. You have worked with your father for such a period of time. You have written or you've helped him write such a wonderful book. What bits of wisdom would you like to leave with our listeners today, or especially what takeaways would you like for the readers of the book to have as well?
We touched on a lot of them, but I would like to be a cheerleader for the Hebrew Bible, and I would like to be a cheerleader for all faiths. When you know who you are, then you can be a better listener to hear who someone else is and what they're trying to tell you. And then possibly because you hold your head up high and you do the things that you have been educated to do because you are part of a faith community. It's communities that hold civilization together, that give people a sense of belonging. And so we need to hold one another's backs. We need to denounce when others are putting a certain group down or a certain country down. And in doing so, we ask them to hold our backs. This kind of conversation is desperately needed in the times that we're living right now. And I find that my father's book is a beautiful tool. Up until now, I have not heard one reaction from readers that is not saying that it changed their outlook or it's beautifully researched and written, and it's just so inspiring. So I hope that we gave the world a little tool to build those bridges, or at least just enjoy reading about this wonderful, wonderful book called the Hebrew Bible.
Well, let me tell you, I have enjoyed my conversation with you today, and I'm pretty sure our listeners have enjoyed themselves as well. For one last time, Sandra, if you could please, can you remind everyone what is the name of the book? And I believe you said we can get it on Amazon. And how do we stay in contact with you as well?
Thank you so much, Dr. Angela, for having me. It's been a beautiful time that I spent with you today. The name of the book is The Book, A Humble Quest into the Hebrew Scriptures. It's by Joseph Heskel Koukou, Koukou. It's edited and illustrated by his daughter, myself, Sandra Koukou. And you can find it on Amazon or on Author House. That's the publisher, authorhouse.com. You can go on the website for the book, which is www.thebookahhumblequest.com. And you can reach me at any time at smilingsandra26@gmail.com.
Thank you again, Sandra, for being on the show with us today.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for spending your time here with me on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And as always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you find His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.